And if they choose to innovate and make the game even more fun without adding other FOMO aspects to it, it could experience a full recovery and even a massive increase in the amount of players actively playing the game. But
like, what do we mean by full recovery, though? Like, what, I don't know what we mean by recovery. Are we talking mobile revenue recovery? Are we talking Twitch numbers? Are we talking YouTube? Are we talking where games are placing in the biggest gacha market? If this is the game that needs recovery, the gacha market's cooked. The game's above Wua. It's in the top 5 on Bilibili. Hypergriff's other game is number 2 on Bilibili. It's like, for me, if and I'm not like specifically calling out Braxy, because this is a conversation people have. Oh man, Arknights needs to come back from the dead. What the if this is dead? Do you know what I mean? Game cost problem. Oh, of course. Like our Enfield, in terms of return on investment, of course it has to make more money than Arknights. Enfield has to make more money than Arknights. Its marketing budget is bigger. Its cost to develop it is bigger. It's a newer, fresh game. It costs more money to make it right. But these are not operating in a vacuum. Now, of course, they've got their own budgets and what's considered successful. But the good thing is, Hypergriff is in a company that's indebted. It isn't a company that has a massive board of different corporate entities with its fingers in the pie. So this is all going into the same pocket. Now, of course, you don't want to be bleeding Arknights dry to support Enfield. Of course you don't. That was stupid, right? But, like, I'm just saying, these are 2 games that are in the top 5 gacha games going into the pocket of a small amount of people who own their own company. It's not like... It's not like it's Wua, in a sense, where it's got this massive conglomerate that expects ROI. A company that owns the majority shares of it. Huyo's in the same boat, right? They I don't know who's invested in Huyo, but as far as I'm aware, they're pretty much, they decide what happens, right? They don't have a multitude of investors. I could be wrong on that. I don't really know too much about Huyoverse, but Hypergriff are pretty much running the show. They're not beholden to a bunch of investors who want their piece of the pie, right? Now, I know that they do have investment, but it's not to that degree where it's like, shit, you know, we're going to be, you know, the cosh is coming down soon if we don't turn this around. They want to turn it around if they think you have to turn it around because they want to turn it around. But I'd argue being 5th on Bilibili, does that need turning around? I don't know. Like, I think the problem is because what we decide is being turned around is we look at Twitch and then we look at gacha revenue and we go, oh, it's not doing as good as the other games. We know that 70% of their revenue doesn't come from mobile anyway. So it's like, it's not doing bad. Could it do better? You can always do better, right? But like anything can do better. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I buy into this argument that the game needs to turn round. Honestly, I don't.
But ultimately, while Enfield won't die off due to a lack of players, like many love to claim on their tribalistic mass misinformation campaigns, it's certainly coming up on a turning point that could decide the future for the game. Whether they decide to chase what's been proven to work over and over and introduce more FOMO and reasons to log in, or if they hunker down and commit to adding fun and engaging repetitive
content. We know what they should do. We know what they should get for the latter route, right? Because the former route will not make a better game. Now, people can come and go, well, look, Enfield's making more money now. Hey, it's the better game, which is stupid. I would much rather Enfield be laughed at by whoever, say, look how much money they're making in comparison. I'll rather take that and a good game. It doesn't matter to me how many new cars or apartments, lowlight boys, any more than it matters to me of, what's his name, from Huyoverse buying a new yacht. I don't care about that. I care about a good game. As long as the game makes enough money to get reinvested into the game and it continues to get better and I get to experience it, happy days. All right, let's have a look at this one then. Because, as I say, we don't usually watch Brax content on the channel. And I'll be honest, it's usually, I don't usually react to sponsored content in terms of for, like, when obviously game companies reach out to CCs to like, can you make a new video about the game because we just got a new patch? And it's not because I don't believe what the creators got to say. It's just typically it's the sort of content that I'm not too bothered about watching. But I think we've got a non-sponsored Brax video here, so we'll just see what's cracking. The state of Arknights Enfield is shocking. I've got a feeling this is a clickbait title because I'm pretty sure dude's quite positive about the game, right? And the recent patch is pretty good, and the direction of the game's pretty good as well. So is it shocking good or shocking bad? Or let's let bro spit for a second and see what he's got to say, shall we?
When you think of a good game, what do you think of? Maybe you think of The Witcher 3 or a game like Dark Souls 3 or maybe even Cyberpunk 2077. Maybe your favorite game of all time was Skyrim or Minecraft or maybe...
Ooh, I can't say I've got a favorite of all time, but Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect 2, Final Fantasy 9, Metal Gear Solid. Maybe I'll chuck Final Fantasy 12 in there as well. Yeah, I'd say that's like my favorite. I can't read. If you put a gun to me, I'd probably say Mass Effect 2. But it's like, yeah, it's so tight. I don't know if I ever put one game above. Fallout New Vegas is definitely up there as well. Man, back in the day, Obsidian were obviously goated, but BioWare, damn, what happened to BioWare? Such a goated game developer back in the day.
Even an FPS game like Overwatch. Hey, it could be worse. At least it's not League. I certainly don't think of gacha games in the upper echelon of gaming history. Genshin Impact...
True. Hear me out, though. Hear me out. I agree with this totally. I actually agree with this. This is why when I see people talking about, like, this is peak gameplay, best content, there's some great gacha games out there, right? And us waifu enjoyers, and if you're a part of anime culture and that, gacha games kind of offer something for you that other games don't, right? But there's two gacha games that I consider up there with not my top tippity top games, but not far off in terms of genuinely good games outside of gacha is definitely Limbus and Arknights now. It is that they are actually good games. You know the term, it's good for a gacha game. Nah, they're just two good games in my opinion. You know? Now you can dislike either of them, but personally, as products, as games, as narrative experiences, with the gameplay and everything all together. Now, obviously I know for a lot of people, be like, just the fact that it's a gacha game knocks it out of that like upper echelon. But for me, they're fucking up there, man. They really are up there.
Definitely made a mark and converted a bunch of free-to-play gamers into daily Primogem wage slaves who are certain that visual novel storytelling is the best way to enjoy a game. Of course, Genshin Impact isn't the only game guilty of this. Pretty much every gacha game out there, from Wuthering Waves to Epic 7, has dailies that they want you to do. I don't think anybody expected the daily grind to change with new gachas coming out, but there were certainly hopes of something different. Maybe the
I agree. I am definitely, like, for me, you know, when people talk about, like, oh, man, the gacha has to evolve. I made a whole video about this, right? For me, it's about these systems. This is what we want evolution in. This is what will push the gacha space forward.
Gacha game that you could play long term that would be more respectful of your time, but still have plenty of non-limited fun content to participate in. When Arknights Enfield was announced, it appeared to be one of the most promising gacha games of all time. It's got what I'd consider to be the best looking character models in the genre, an existing IP to build off of for story and world building, and a combat system that's completely different from pre-existing mobile.
Let me just go back a second.
But still have plenty of non-limited fun content to participate in. When Arknights Endfield was announced, it appeared to be one of the most promising gacha games of all time. It's got...
Obviously, I think this is probably... I feel like... Obviously, this is a personal thing. I'm guessing he's stating, like, the feeling around it before. Was it that, though? I don't know if, like, obviously, it was hyped up because it was Hypergriff, right? Rightfully so, because the previous game, Arknights, is a fucking banger. I think it gets, just like any new gacha game that looks pretty as well, gets hyped up anyway, just because. But I don't know if it was ever, like, I feel like from day one, like, I think people who were looking forward to it were really looking forward to it, right? One of them, and I'm still in that camp. Great game. But I can't, like, I don't know if there was ever those... I can't remember, like, being a sort of consensus that it was considered one of the most promising gacha games, personally. I think at least within I guess my circles, I think people were very sort of like, there was definitely splits and different viewpoints of what people were expecting and wanted and stuff, right? For me, it was one of the most promising things, but it quickly became a disappointment. It had everything to be very big, just like look at the numbers of pre-registers. Well, that's fair. That's definitely fair, because it did, right? I think every new open world gacha game, though, now just blows up on pre-registers, right? Every gacha game is marked as the best new gacha game of all time. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. I feel like just by default of being a visually impressive game, everything kind of gets put up there where everybody's like, oh, is this the Genshin killer? You know, and by a fact then, de facto, it becomes, I guess you could argue, the best gacha game in terms of success, I suppose. But I don't know, I'm being nitpicky here. Like, I just don't know if I kind of thought like that. Like, from day dot of playing it, when I first played it in one of the tests, I was like, shit, this is me. This is me all over. And I still kind of think like that. In terms of the action gacha games, I believe it's the best one. But that's a personal thing, right? That's definitely a personal thing. But I'm just more thinking about the overall sentiment, I guess. Anyway, let's move on.
What I'd consider to be the best looking character models in the genre, an existing IP to build off of for story and world building.
I definitely agree with that. I've been on the book of saying this multiple times. I think Enfield does have the best character models in gacha. I think it does.
A combat system that's completely different from pre-existing mobile action RPG slot. Despite these accolades, at the moment, Enfield appears to be a punching bag for the general gacha community, being a game touted as having the worst gacha system.
Is it a punching bag for the general community, or is it specific corners of the community that are just really loud that makes it seem like they are the general community? Because I think there's a lot more people are negative towards the gacha system, but I think that's a feels thing, right? Which I understand that. A lot of people say it feels bad, and if something feels bad, it feels bad. You can't stop the way somebody feels about something, right? But like, mathematically, it's nowhere near the worst gacha system. It's not the best, but it's way off being the worst, right? It's sort of upper middling in terms of gacha systems, right? There's systems that are better, but there's much worse. I think it's just that it feels bad to some people, right? There's definitely parts of the gacha community that shit on it. We know those parts of the community that do that, right?
In history by some community members. And while that's objectively untrue, FGO exists, the gacha does feel terrible from a subjective standpoint. When comparing gacha data,
it's like, it doesn't feel bad for me, I guess, but I suppose it's because my eyes were open to exactly what it was from the start and how you should approach it. But at the end of the day, feels are subjective, and that's it, right? That's just how it is.
Enfield's gacha system is actually slightly better than the new industry standard in terms of the odds of getting a rate-up character.
Yep.
The new industry standard being the Hoyoverse gacha.
And that's not even taking into account the weapon system. Now, it would be nice to be able to get more Arsenal tickets, I agree, from other ways, right? But then you add the weapon system in with the 4%, and then the fact that it's a rebate from pools, it's just like, it's elevated, you know what I mean? It is one of those systems, though. The more lucky you are in character pools, you don't want to be ultra lucky in this game. It's like a weird one, right? Typically, you're like, I want to get things as early as possible. But in Enfield, it's like, if you want the SIG weapon anyway, at least, you kind of want to be a sort of less lucky in a way, don't you?
Gacha system that every new 3D gacha bases their initial system off of, and hopefully expands upon. But with that said, the amount of pulls you can actually get in the game matters, and if Enfield has less pulls available than the competition, the system instantly becomes worse. But realistically,
well, we've got to look at it in context as well, right? Now, again, I haven't been keeping up with how many pulls Enfield has. I haven't. Like, I've got all the characters I want to get. I'm sensible with my pulls, and I've spent a little bit on Enfield, so I have to add that out there, right? I'm not here to say you get more pulls than any other game, but you have to take into the context. One, let's just say, you know, the pull you get from the game. It's not equal. They're not all made equal, right? Like, one pull's worth of pulls currency in something like Wuthering Waves, or something like Star Rail, or something like Zenless Zone Zero, or whatever. Think of a game that's got a character and a weapon, right? It doesn't equate to one pull in Enfield, if that makes sense, because you're just getting them. It doesn't, to guarantee you don't have to do as many pulls, and also we're taking into the weapon system into that as well, right? So 50 pulls in one game isn't 50 pulls in another game. They're not equal, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Because 50 pulls is taking you towards almost hit triggering a 50-50, or 50 pulls is almost halfway to a guarantee, where, you know, they've got a bit slightly different value, haven't they?
Realistically, what matters more is the fact that Enfield's gacha feels bad. Since the guaranteed pity is at 120 and you can lose 50-50s multiple times on the way there, they've created a system that feels genuinely terrible to players.
See, like, for me, it's, I know people don't see this, but because I try to go into my pulls for characters I really want with the 120, I know I'm getting this character because it's a spark system, right? The way you treat Enfield is a typical spark system. The character's guaranteed, just like it is in NTE, right? But you do have 50-50s on the way to it, whereas NTE, there's no 50-50. But I just treat it's a spark system, right? But to me, if I've got 120 pulls and I'm happy to go to 120, now, if I want to get it early, say I've got loads of Arsenal tickets, buzzing. But it's not going to happen. But let's just say I lose 5 50-50s on the way to that 120. That's sick. Honestly, I'm like, bro, I've come out with 7 6-star units in 120 pulls. Now, that ain't happening, right? I know probably extremes it can. You probably maybe 2 to 4 if you're really unlucky, maybe. I've only ever lost 1 50-50 on the way to 120. I know people have lost more. I know it's happened. But the way I take it, because I was going in spending 120, you know, I've come out with multiple units or multiple dupes still for 120. I'm happy about that. Honestly, I'm coming out to that with a smile on my face of like, shit. Plus, it's giving me a shit ton of Arsenal tickets as well now. So not only have I got more characters, I've got more weapon pools. It's like a win-win right now. If I'm going in with a gambling mindset of, I got 50 pulls and a dream, and then I lose 2 50-50s, understandable. But you kind of, the systems give you an out, and you're choosing to just fucking spin the bottle, right? You know, you're spinning the bottle, really.
Who are used to having a failsafe after losing their 50-50, which again, having that failsafe has been an industry standard for over 5 years now. Pulling on other 3D gachas versus Enfields after saving up pulls is like if you just ran a mile and are looking for a nice glass of water. You're offered 2 glasses of water. One of them is normal, regular old water, and the other one has been infused with charcoal powder. Despite the charcoal water having antioxidants and technically being better for you than the regular water, it's going to feel awful to drink, and you're probably going to choose the regular water.
I kind of like that analogy.
It's cozy, it's not over convoluted, it's easy and refreshing. It feels nice to drink regular water because it's simple and it's what you're used to. That, and it's what we need to live, but we're kind of ignoring that with this analogy.
We're drinking too much water.
Drinking the charcoal water means that on the way down, you have to deal with the potential grittiness from the powder and off taste, and, well, you get
Part of the disappointment is from OGIK players expecting something close to that, though. Oh, there definitely is. Like, you've got some people from other games who have their disappointments with Enfield, and then Enfield's in a special place that it's got a community from a game that's just a different game, right? And there's that disappointment there as well. So like Enfield's sort of in a special place, which you'd probably argue maybe a worse place, right? Is people can say, well, it had this massive IP, it should do well, but it's an IP that has a community that has got a lot of expectations because they've been treated pretty good for 7 years, haven't they? So like it kind of, I suppose it's a hard spot to come into because you've got the criticism for non-Arknights players and then the disappointment from the expectation of Arknights players as well and what they wanted as well. So yeah, it's understandable.
Nobody wants to drink water that looks like venom anyways. But despite the perceived problems with Enfield's gacha system and the fact that it does genuinely just feel bad to lose multiple 50-50s, how the game is perceived isn't as much of an issue as you might think. After all, if Enfield is a punching bag for the gacha community, Genshin Impact is a punching bag for all gamers everywhere. And despite that, the game is doing exceedingly well. Honkai Star Rail is in a similar boat. Anywhere you look on social media, there's likely some sort of hate campaign, but the game is still doing really well. I wish I could make
somebody said this to me the other day. It goes back to the age-old thing about money, right? Somebody, they said it was a random comment on a video that had nothing to do with it, but they were talking about Enfield and that it's doing badly. That was it. I think I was talking about something else, and it was like, man, there's so little to do in Enfield that these people are talking about stuff like this, and it's like, are you, whatever? Let's put that stupidity to the side. And I'm responding back, and then they said something about that's why it's not doing very well monetarily. And that's why I think they were something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing here. That Weir's better because he's doing more. And I was like, well, by that very argument, typically Weir players are not going to accept that Genshin, Lads, and Star Rail are better games than Weir. So, like, what are you even making that argument for? Like, how much revenue a game makes has got nothing to do with the quality or subjectively how much you enjoy it. Right now, you could argue there's a correlation. Something needs to be sort of good to a lot of people to do well, fair, but it doesn't mean that you have to enjoy it. It's stupid, right?
On a bad month. Ultimately, a gacha system that's widely considered to be bad will stop some people from trying the game. But
True.
it won't kill the game entirely. The only thing that will kill a game is whether or not the game itself is actually fun to play. It's also the same reason boycotts on games don't really work.
Yeah, this is why I said, man, like, of course, monetization of a game matters, but at the end of the day, gacha games can have kind of crappy monetization. If the game's good, the game's good, man. Now, it would be better to have a great game with great monetization, of course, but a bad game with good monetization isn't going to be successful, whereas a great game with bad monetization has a lot of potential to be successful. It's just the way it is, you know what I mean?
For every one person on social media who says a decision is bad and quits to boycott a game, there's
just finished that tanky vid. Don't watch that shit. He uses the most recent final boss. Another boss is very recently an insult to role in the game. Insult to role in the game. Oh, there's lots of spoilers. Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you. Appreciate that, man. Legend.
9 other people who don't like the decision who keep playing the game anyways because it's fun. And then there's also like 100 people who don't even know that there's a boycott happening or that people are even upset to begin with. So then that begs the question, what is happening with Enfield? Well, to understand Enfield's faults, we first have to understand what Enfield succeeds in.
Okay.
So first off, the character designs are all incredibly well done.
Yeah.
Arknights as an IP has some of the best character designs in
not only from a creative aspect, Arknights in general has amazing designs, and I think Enfield does too, but just purely from a fidelity standpoint, from how they are made, right? Even if you don't like the look of some of the characters, they are the best looking for me in terms of fidelity, and they've got it. If they don't have the highest poly count, they've done some fucking witchcraft, right? Because they look like they do.
Of Gacha, and it reflects well in Enfield's designs as well. Many of the characters in it are absolutely beautiful, and players definitely want them. It's me. I'm players. I also think I might be in the minority opinion here, but I actually think Enfield's combat is fun. It's definitely hard to optimize.
It just baffles me. Obviously, this is a personal thing, right? It's a personal thing. I just... that feels that he's saying that that's a hot take. I'm like, how is that considered a hot take? I mean, the combat's fucking great, man. Like... And it's already starting to show. It has so much more nuance than a lot of the other action games. Potential adjustments of, I guess you could call rotations to a degree, right? But it's not exactly the same. But I guess you're rotating in a specific way, your inputs. But yeah, man, the combat is fucking really good in my opinion. But again, this is a personal thing, right? This is a personal thing. It just is what it is.
So much of your best damaging rotation is directly related to how many dodges you get and when enemies are defeated. But overall, I think it's a really fresh take on gacha combat, and I like it. In my opinion, at least.
Let's even be let's even side with, because some people say it's rotation. I suppose at the end of the day, every single game is pressing buttons. You can break it down to that, right? But let's say it is, and I think you could argue that it is. It's just so much. For me, Enfield does so much more to separate itself from the other rotation-style combat games that it just feels quite unique in that regard, right? When you compare it to maybe Silver Palace, Rua, NTE, maybe Zenless does its own thing as well a little bit. And Genshin's all around the reaction system as well, right? So it's sort of a different thing in itself. But, obviously we've seen Rewind and Cadence and Project 2/3 and Azure Familiar all look like they're going to lean heavily into rotation stuff. I think Enfield, for me, does enough to separate itself from the others personally. I do. I think that.
I also think that the world design of Enfield is very well done.
Yep.
And
personally, for me, again, this is where Enfield shines. Not only the best character designs in the game, or not so much the best character designs, because Arknights and Limbus and Reverse 1999 probably at the top in terms of character designs, but in terms of character visuals. But the environmental designs, I just don't think anybody's touching them at the minute. Rua has some amazing stuff. a lot of lighting does a lot of heavy lifting. I think raw visual design wise, Enfield clears, man. I just think it's the best world in terms of exploring and looking at for me personally.
Stands out exceedingly well in a sea of gacha games that are all trying to copy Genshin Impact. Never mind the music being phenomenal, but the idea that you can industrialize the world and make farming for characters and upgrades easier if you put in the time is a great idea for a game where
you got a more interaction with the world, haven't you?
Thing over and over. Arknights Enfield follows in the footsteps of OG Arknights and makes everything very easy to automate, so that if you put in the time to play the game and set up your automation, you no longer have to play the game. And this is where I think Enfield falls flat, because unlike other gacha games, Arknights Enfield respects your time too much.
Arknights.
Okay, so
the duality of man, right? The duality of man. This is like the great thing with video games sometimes of finding the balance. Too much is too much, too little. What the fucking hell's the point? Do you know what I mean? It's that duality sometimes that we scream for less, scream for more, and then when we get it, we're like, whoa, I don't know if I like this, you know? I don't even like this.
Now that we've let that sink in, let's talk about it. When you grind a character in Genshin Impact, you have to go around the open world to collect Ascension materials. It'll take you like 10 minutes to get everything if you're fast. Same deal in Wuthering Waves. Well, in Enfield, that's become hyper-optimized. Now it only takes you 5 minutes or less to get everything because you have ziplines set up everywhere, and you can also grow the Ascension materials in your ship while you're offline. When you want to gear a character in Genshin, you have to grind out artifact domains. This can take days, weeks, or even months to finish. I remember when a certain
Man, and as well, when you look to things like Echoes, it's never finished now. Of course, to clear content, you don't need to have this hyper optimized thing, but the potential for never being finished is always there, right? You know, there's always that 1% of a substat, you know, the god roll, the required substat that would just make this perfect. It's pretty much unobtainable for 99% of people, right?
set came out, I spent 4 weeks doing max refreshes on resin and spent 100 fragile resin on it, and I didn't even finish one usable set of it. Honkai Star Rail is the same, Wuthering Waves is similar, but it's much easier to get gear since you can technically farm infinitely for the right main stats on your gear, with Overworld dropping echoes even in co-op. But it can still take weeks at a time to get a good set. Now take Enfield. To gear your character, you need 2 things, actual gear and weapon essence. And to get gear, all you have to do is set up your factory and log out.
This is why, honestly, it blew my mind when I saw Saint saying that he'd rather be on the gear treadmill forever because it gives him something to do. It's like, nah, fuck that. I'd rather have something to do, but not the gear treadmill. I'm not interested in that at all.
Arknights.
That's it, you're done playing. The factory will produce the items that you need for gear, and you don't have to worry about rolling for substats or anything. Essences, on the other hand, do require you to use stamina, and they have RNG rolls. But there's items in the game that mitigate that significantly, and overall, you end up getting the perfect essence in like 2 to 3 days. Not accounting for the extra stamina the game basically shovels down your throat on a daily basis.
Like, as somebody who has neglected that side of the game, really, and I'm not like, is it Renegade who's got insane amounts of coolant gel that just literally bro's sorted? But like, sometimes it can take me a couple of days more than that, you know? And sometimes it takes me more than a couple of days. Not weeks, though, at all, you know? But sometimes it takes me more than 2 to 3 days. But that's more that me being a slacker sometimes as well, though. You know what I mean? I'm still using fucking Arcane's temporary kit because I haven't done the new base stuff. I mean, the new factory stuff this patch because I want to do stuff on stream. And the factory stuff I'll do off stream, but I still want to do all like Rooted Realm and everything, like, you know what I mean? I'm slacking hard at the minute.
Cuts down on gear grinds by months, literally months of saved time logging.
I need 10 minutes for a good weapon essence because of pre-farm. There you go.
I'm lazy. Stock bills, but even then, it doesn't feel like that much of an incentive, especially since you get them so quickly. And setting up your factory for them isn't even hard to do. Ever since the game launched, you could go to Kyosten's channel and
yo, this is everybody's go-to. Everybody's go-to, man. To be fair, I think I've used some of Renegade's blueprints as well, but it's pretty much everybody's go-to, right?
Find a blueprint that hyper-optimizes your base builds to produce the maximum amount of the best item, and you could do it in...
Kyosten is just him. He's just him. You know, just him. He's just
seconds.
him.
So what does that leave to do in Enfield?
Okay.
Story? Dailies?
I'll say where I think, for me personally, Enfield succeeds, right? It doesn't demand, like, a annoying grinds that I don't find enjoyable through gear, RNG gear and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. I don't like gear treadmills personally, especially when it comes. I don't mind if you've got main stats and that's it. So when you start to have multiple substats and there's variances of high, medium, low versions of those substats as well, right? Pain in the arse. I'm not a fan of that, right? But for me, where it does well, I'm really starting to enjoy the story. I think 1.0 had weaknesses. It still has its weaknesses. I want to see more Enmin talking. I want to see more of characters without the Enmin, but that's something I think we still have time for. Still a little bit, maybe a little bit too early to demand that at the moment. I'm hopeful for the story. The production quality of the story has been brilliant for me personally. The gameplay itself, in terms of the combat, I think is really good. Take into the actual exploration for me, because that's where this game shines in the gameplay sense. I love going from A to B. It's why I think people really hate my points on because I'm so outspoken about him, because Enfield does what I want in a sense. There's just enough friction in exploration. There's just enough desire to explore. And the way the maps are designed just feels good to explore, but feels natural. You feel like you're in a real place. It's a fantasy world, of course it is. But as I'm changing from different terrains and different areas, things feel like they're consistent and they work within the world, and I love that. And just the exploration for me feels like a sort of PS2, PS3 era action JRPG. It kind of feels like that, and I absolutely adore that about it. Endgame, I think definitely could be better. Umbral Monument for me is sort of like a TOA, but it's much better in the sense that it doesn't feel just a pure stat check. It definitely has some of that. I haven't done the majority of the content in these Echoes of War, and I feel like there's a little bit of that there on some of the stages. But that being said, if you want mats, you're good to go. It's just for trim medals, which I do want to get personally. I love things like Delver of the Cryptic. I love that they're doing that sort of stuff. I want to see them do more of that stuff. I'm excited of the potential of an IS mode as well. What I like about the Endgame at the moment, I don't think they've quite found... CC was good as well. I don't think they've quite found the holy grail of Endgame, but I like that it seems like they're testing a lot of stuff, whether it's through little events or little temporary modes, or these semi-personal, permanent seasonal content. I definitely do like the experimentation and the testing that's going in there, which makes me hopeful that we are going to get that mode where it's just like, yo, this is the shit, you know? Because obviously, when you think about Endgame, for me, in any gacha game, Arknights has the best endgame. You know, IS is the best endgame, and they do some of the best events, if not the best events, when they're firing on all cylinders. So I'm hopeful for that, and I like the experimentation that's going in as well, personally.
Endgame? That's basically it. The only reason to log into Enfield is to do the story, complete your dailies, and clear Endgame. And yes, that is similar to every gacha game out there. But here's the main difference. Okay. Enfield allows players to optimize the ever-living heck out of their playtime with in-game tools. Farming items and gear for characters in a majority of cases just does not take that much time. It's an infinitesimally small portion of the game. Whereas in other 3D gacha games, farming for characters and their gear is a majority of the time spent in game.
See, like for me, I understand the argument, right? I don't know if this is where they're getting to, that because it's so efficient, you end up not playing the game as much as you possibly would, so you ache for content and you might play it less, which I'm that guy, right? If I haven't got anything to do, I won't just jump on the game for the sake of it. And I actually stretch my content in Enfield because I really like the game. I like to come back and just have things to do. That's the best way to play Enfield for me. Is just take your time. It really is, personally. Play the game how you want to play, right? But I do not want this. I do not want to be like, well, the only reason I have to play is to farm for a character that in a few months isn't going to be part of my main rotation anyway. So what am I doing? I'm infinitesimally farming for something that I'm never going to obtain for a character that I'm going to stop using soon. That is a waste of time for me. That honestly, it's a waste of time. Now, for everybody, it's different, right? But this is why I would rather have that, and then it's like, okay, I've got nothing to do in the game in the minute. Let me go play another game, rather than the game being like Bucko, you need to come back today. We need you back today because you got to do this piece of content 15 times again because we really want you to get that substat that you really, really want. You know, you really, really want that. I don't care about that. So like, I'm in no different point of appreciation of the game because, you know, when a game gives me that, I ain't playing it anyway. So I'm in the same boat. You either make it efficient or I just ain't doing this shit. I don't care about that min-maxing. Like, I just don't care. It's a single-player game for me, personally. You know what I mean? I'm just not doing it.
And on top of that, Enfield's dailies are so minimal that players can complete them in about a minute or two. Yep. And as someone who's broken free of Gacha FOMO, it doesn't even feel like dailies
what's your routine for doing your dailies? Like, I usually just go in, I spam one of the instances for like whatever I feel like farming that day, whether it's like weapon stuff or character mats, T-creds. I level a character up one level. What else do I do? Just trying to think what else I do to get my dailies done now. I feel like that's all I ever do. It feels like it is a thing that takes like 1 or 2 minutes, all right.
Are worth it. 80% of the game is already automated. The only thing I'm missing if I skip a day is a bit of premium currency and my daily stamina, which also can be stored for other days. What else is there to do? Well, their more recent limited time endgame mode contingency contract was a really great endgame mode as far as Gacha is concerned. But in terms of boss mechanics, it does ultimately stay a DPS check, dodge the AoE endgame. There's no puzzle mechanic.
He's right there. The puzzle mechanics, this is something I've been desperately begging for. Give me fucking raid boss mechanics, man. Give me raid boss mechanics. I want to have things where even I can't damage an enemy and they might become passive and I'm getting flooded with ads until I do something on the stage. Give me that sort of stuff, right? But I feel like this isn't the same thing, right? Because it wasn't puzzle stuff, but some of the mechanics were really quite good in the sense that, like, obviously if you want to go for the maximum stuff, you know, there's definitely a DPS thing there, right? But with the way some of the contracts were set up, man, for a first run on CC, I think it was a really good job, personally. And they did a really good job on the first run of CC in this game. I thought it was going to be a lot worse, if I'm honest. I thought, like, you know, first run, contingency contract, they need to work things out. This is going to be a bit of a mess. I was actually quite impressed with how well it landed, personally.
No instant wipes if you don't perform the required task, and nothing to engage your brain while you do your rotation. This is an endgame everyone has already played, with the exception being that you get to pick your own debuffs to make the fights fit more to your team. It's definitely more free-to-play friendly than other gachas, which means you don't need as many premium units, which is another reason you don't need to log in. Gacha Game's entire formula is getting you to come back and play every day. They use FOMO, or fear of missing out, to
get what I get from this, and I'm not saying that Brax has ever argued this argument, but it's a lot of arguments. It seems like a lot of the negative aspects outside of like the gacha model itself, or if you just like the game or not, is that the game doesn't have a lot of the psychological triggers that we say is terrible about gacha games. Big W's, right? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the time people are like, man, this is what I hate about gacha games. A, B, and C, and typically it comes down to FOMO, psychological triggers, daily logins, the stuff that's there just to keep you hooked just enough that you're more likely to spend on the next banner, right? And it's like, the game's like, well, we're not going to hit you with those. And then people are like, well, that sucks. Now, obviously, he's not necessarily saying that. Like, that's where you need replacement content in terms of content that keeps you logging in. And that's where we hope we start to see the groundwork that Arknights made coming across, right? That's where I want to see things like raid sort of content, the expansion of things like Delver of the Cryptic, this Rooted Realm. Do something for the love of God with Etch-Based Salvage. I know people keep saying that that game's dead, that mode's dead. Do something with it. If we do get an IS mode, okay, fair enough. And that's what you do, right? You replace that FOMO-based daily grind content with genuine content, right? That's what games are supposed to be. For me, games are there to experience content. Give me the content. Because people's argument usually, well, that's a gacha, that's how it's supposed to be. It doesn't have to be like that. And I am cognizant of there's always a problem that developers have, that they can never keep up with how much a player consumes content, right? Something that can take them 6 months to develop can be completed within a few days. That's just the fact of how video games work. And we have to accept that. And there is going to always be downtime, just like there is in any other live service game, whether it's an MMO, whether it's a shooter, whether it's a hero type game, whatever it might be. There's always going to be downtime, right? And we have to accept that. But it's about giving that baseline, right? And I think all gacha games need to improve on that, whether they've got daily triggers or not, right?
To come back for limited time events with limited time rewards
as well. I agree with something like that as well.
To make sure that you play the game every single day for player metrics. Arknights Enfield is the antithesis of that, and in a way, the most consumer-friendly 3D gacha game out there right now.
Can't say that.
It respects your time so much that people have stopped logging in.
The funny thing is that I've heard from particular parts of the community, from particular CCs in their community, is on one side they will say there's nothing to do in this game and you need a gear treadmill, and then they'll flip within the next sentence and saying the game doesn't respect your time and it wants you to treat it like a job. It's like, bucko, what is it? It's one or the other, man. It can't be both.
Into the games that don't respect their time. Why? Because it just makes sense. Why would you play the game you could play anytime when a bunch of games are incentivizing you to give your time to them? Truth be told, 99% of the time, the game you can play anytime is a better game. Usually, they're not a gacha game. But it can't be 100% said to be true for Enfield, because despite Enfield having great character designs, an immersive world, and being incredibly fun when there's content, Enfield doesn't have much content that incentivizes players to come back. What? Now, this basically goes into a whole discussion about FOMO versus making content that's so fun people choose to come back.
Okay, I'm glad he's gone down. This is exactly what I was just saying. This is exactly what I was just saying, right? You know, I would rather have great replayability, great content over FOMO. Fuck gear treadmills. That's not gameplay. What am I doing with my time? You want me to run a rat race? You want me in the hamster wheel? I don't consider that gameplay, right, personally. A grind shouldn't just be a grind. A grind should be fun. If you want me to grind, you've got to give me something to grind towards. Give me an extra few percentiles of a stat number so I can clear a piece of content 2 seconds quicker. Get out of here. And then I'll just use a different team anyway because a new character's power crept at the next patch. I ain't bothered about that. This is what I want. This is what I want. Great replayability.
Regardless of rewards, gacha games...
or even just solid, amazing one-off bits of content...
rely on FOMO because most of them aren't consistently more fun than good non-gacha games like Slay the Spire, The Last of Us, Pokemon, Deadlock, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. You get the picture. Enfield isn't relying on FOMO as
I don't know,
as
man.
gachas.
Like, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is a good game, but like, you know, it's not. You know, it's got its issues with like replayability stuff.
Which means they must rely on content being more fun than other games.
It is a one-and-done game, though, really,
and ultimately, that's why I argue that the gacha system isn't the reason that people aren't playing, because what's stopping people from coming back is that they don't have a good reason to. Now, Enfield devs are 100% aware of this because they're more billionaires over there at Hypergriff, and they can definitely hire things like analysts. But ultimately, what's going to decide if Enfield is seen as a good game or gacha slop is going to depend on if they're willing to add fun, repetitive content, or if they add more FOMO to compete with other...
I honestly think I think the fun replayable content is going to be a factor. We'll have to wait and see, right? I know there's lots of people who disagree with me, but I think a big factor is going to be how well and how far they take the story as well, whether it's considered a good game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the two best gacha games in the space are the best gacha games. Not only are they good games, but they are narratively the best experiences. You know, that's what makes them the best games for me.
Games doing the same thing. I personally really like what Enfield is, but I like the idea of what Enfield could be even more. When I look at Star Rail in comparison, HSR has both Divergent Universe and Currency Wars, which are permanent non-endgame modes that are fun to play. Enfield doesn't have anything like that to keep people playing even after they...
See, like, this is where, like, we can't have these comparisons, though. You can't compare the state of a game and the state of its content when it's like a game that's multiple years old compared to a game that's just hit its 6 months. You know what I mean? Now, comparisons are fine. It's like when we look to, like, when I see people talk about the vast content in comparison to Arknights to Enfield, and I'm like, that's not fair. 7 years compared to 6 months, comparing it to Genshin, comparing it to... Now, compare it at the specific times, fair. And you can even say, I just think this game's better. have at it. I don't like it when people look to content in a game that's 2 to 3 to 4 years old and go, this game has more content, and it's like, well, what do you expect? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you expect? That's like being like, you know, walking into a business and thinking that the dude who's been there for 6 months is going to have just as much as experience and expertise as the guy who's been there for fucking 6 years. I mean, if he has, that dude's been fucking up. You honestly expect him to be in a better position, right, and know more about what's going on.
They've done their dailies or completed their main daily FOMO tasks.
Now,
Sure.
There's, from a consumer standpoint, you can look at and say, well, games are, you know, we're moving on each time an additional game comes out. The consumer doesn't care about that. But at the same time, if you're going to look at it from a critical standpoint and argue points, you've got to accept that it's not going to be in that state. Now, does a customer care? That's a different conversation to have. And, you know, I suppose he's talking a little bit more about how the customer sees that experience, I guess. But, like, I mean, sometimes you got to be a little bit fair, man, and be like, oh, I can't expect that. But, you know, if you don't come back because something else is doing it for you, that's just how it is, right?
Space salvage exists.
No game will ever be good enough, really, because they're always going to have that, like, unless they just hit for you, which Enfield did hit for me. So that's why, like, you know, I don't worry about that so much. I'm like, I'm confident it's going to have the content. Now, if it didn't hit, it didn't scratch the itch, maybe I'll be less inclined to be willing to accept that it hasn't got the content. You know?
I don't really know anyone that's logging into Enfield
different strokes for different folks.
Specifically. The story for 1.4 was absolutely amazing as well, but it certainly isn't going to keep anyone repeatedly logging in. The story is basically a one and done until next patch. While their first, second, third, and fourth combat endgame events have all been fun, and I really like the mechanics of Echoes of War, by the way, by the fifth combat event,
I like parts of it. Some parts are not that great, though.
it gets kinda old. I'd personally love to see something that expands on the game's factory without blueprints being a 3-click option to basically bypass all of the difficulty. Some kind of factory or tower-based PvE or PvE mode could add a ton of replayability without having to rely on specific units, and it feel completely new. To be completely fair, Enfield is
I've said this from day one, this sort of like, you know, in between that gives me a sort of Arknights experience in Enfield would definitely be a great thing to have.
Relatively new gacha game, and it hasn't had nearly as much time to add new game modes. It suffers the same problem that a lot of modern MMOs do, where when a new MMO comes out, it doesn't have nearly as much content as the MMOs that have been running for 10 to 20 years already. Players blaze
and that's just the pain point of being the new guy, right? You know, that there's always something else to compare it to, and yeah.
The content, and now there's nothing left to do, and the only thing that can fix that new MMO is adding 10 more years of content. Other competing gachas have been out for years and have way more content for players to play through and enjoy, and Enfield has quite a bit of catching up to do. In Enfield's case, though, they have a very important decision to make on what direction they want to take the game, whether they want to make it more predatory to get more players, or if they want to attempt to innovate in the space and potentially risk not holding as many players in the name of making the game more fun overall. And if they choose to innovate and make the game even more fun without adding other FOMO aspects to it, it could experience a full recovery and even a massive increase in the amount of players actively playing the game. But
like, what do we mean by full recovery, though? Like, what, I don't know what we mean by recovery. Do you know what I mean? Like, are we talking mobile revenue recovery? Are we talking Twitch numbers? Are we talking YouTube? Are we talking where games are placing in the biggest gacha market? Do you know what I mean? Like, if this is the game that needs recovery, the gacha market's cooked. Do you know what I mean? The gacha market's cooked. The game's above Wua. You know what I mean? It's in the top 5 on Bilibili. Hypergriff's other game is number 2 on Bilibili. It's like, for me, if and I'm not like specifically calling out Braxy, because this is a conversation people have. Oh man, Arknights needs to come back from the dead. What the if this is dead? Do you know what I mean? Game cost problem. Oh, of course. Like, our Enfield, in terms of return on investment, of course it has to make more money than Arknights. Enfield has to make more money than Arknights. Its marketing budget is bigger. Its cost to develop it is bigger. It's a newer, fresh game. It costs more money to make it, right. But these are not operating in a vacuum. Now, of course, they've got their own budgets and what's considered successful. But the good thing is, Hypergriff is in a company that's indebted. it isn't a company that has a massive board of different corporate entities with its fingers in the pie. So this is all going into the same pocket. Now, of course, you don't want to be bleeding Arknights dry to support Enfield. Of course you don't. That was stupid, right? But, like, I'm just saying, these are two games that are in the top 5 gacha games going into the pocket of a small amount of people who own their own company. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not like, it's not like it's WoW in a sense, where it's got this massive conglomerate that expects ROI, ROI, ROI. A company that owns the majority shares of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, Hoyo's in the same boat, right? They I don't know who's invested in Hoyo, but as far as I'm aware, they're pretty much, they decide what happens, right? They don't have a multitude of investors. I could be wrong on that. I don't really know too much about Hoyoverse, but Hypergriff are pretty much running the show. They're not beholden to a bunch of investors who want their piece of the pie, right? Now, I know that they do have investment, but it's not to that degree where it's like, shit, you know, we're going to be, you know, the cosh is coming down soon if we don't turn this around. They want to turn it around if they think you have to turn it around because they want to turn it around. But I'd argue being fifth on Billy, does that need turning around? I don't know. Like, I think the problem is because what we decide is being turned around is we look at Twitch and then we look at gacha revenue and we go, oh, it's not doing as good as the other games. We know that 70% of their revenue doesn't come from mobile anyway. So it's like, it's not doing bad. Now, could it do better? You can always do better, right? But like anything can do better. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I buy into this argument that the game needs to turn round. Honestly, I don't. It's just saying itself built up from AK revenue. I don't know, man. I don't think it is. I think if you're in the top 5 of Billy, you're making bank. And if you're bringing in 10 million at a lowest estimate on mobile, right, you're making shit tons of money. Shit tons of money. Like if you say, let's go off an estimate, 70% of the revenue is coming from PC, right? Non-mobile. If what is it they made last month? 9 million, 10 million, right? Let's even be conservative and let's just say double it. Let's say it's a 50-50 split. They made $18 to $20 million this month. You've got to remember, the first 2 weeks of this game launching, it made $173 million. That's got to have covered the budget for this game and probably a bit of the marketing budget as well. I bet this game probably, cost $150 million to make? It might not have even been that much, right? And then they probably spent a couple of $100 million on marketing. So, like, I would imagine this game's in the profit now. Maybe when you add in running costs and stuff, maybe different, right? But it can't be far off breaking even. So, like, I don't know if it's necessarily in a sustain mode. I'd argue it's probably in profit mode, but it could be more. Of course, it could be more, you know? I was talking about in this Discord yesterday, when it comes to video games, like any corporate entity, your biggest outgoing is wages, right? That's your biggest outgoing. And what is there, like 1,600 people at Hypergriff? Was it 1,600 or working on Enfield? I think it's at Hypergriff, right? That's a hell of a lot less than Hoyoverse, which of course makes sense because they're making multiple games on multiple fronts. You got to look at, I was talking about this in Discord yesterday. Overheads are a thing. There's two, let's say there's me and Flix. There's Pixel Corp and there's Flix Corp, right? And Flix Corp's making $50 million a month and Pixel Corp's making $12 million. You'd look to Flix Corp now in terms of being able to engage investment and potential using debt to your advantage, taking $25 to $50 million, right, is going to look good on the books, right? But let's say Flix Corp's overheads are $42 million a month, right? Because they've got multiple businesses all across the world. They're employing thousands and thousands of people. Their marketing budget's through the roof. They're doing multiple things all at the same time, right? So their net profit each month's $8 million. That's what they get to keep, right? And Pixel Corp over here, his outgoings is $5 million, right? So he takes home $7 million. Do you know what I mean? In that thing, you're like, whoa. He's only making $1 million more than me now with a massive turnover in comparison. Now, of course, when you look to reach out to investors and loans and stuff, having a big turnover can help you sort of get that sort of stuff. But also overheads can be a thing to be worried about. There can also be some of the companies like that, people like that, investors will look at me like, well, there's some assets there for me to acquire if things go wrong. But do you see what I'm saying? The actual money we put in the bank could be sort of similar. ROI is the main thing, right? People forget in the gacha space about overheads. Like, I would imagine Hoyoverse probably operate with some of the biggest overheads in the gacha space, right? They're making what they've got. We've got Genshin, Zenless, Star Rail. What's the fucking other one they made years ago? There's Impact Third and the Tears of Themis. Does Tears of Themis still run? Let's just say they've got 4 major games they're running. They've got about another 4 or 5 coming out, right? These motherfuckers have got 8, 9 games. So their overheads, just by a factor, are going to be way bigger than somebody like Hypergriff or somebody like Kuro, right? They're running 1 to 2 games, maybe 3 games. They've got a couple of things going on, maybe developing something else as well. Obviously, you got Hypergriff who've got Watch It as well, their other game, and Popacom as well. But these are tiny, like, one and done budgets. It's not a consistent spending margin for them. They're probably operating skeleton developer crews as well. So, yeah, their overheads are just going to be minuscule in comparison, right? Now, of course, Hoyo are not doing bad. Hoyo are making that much money. They're building fucking nuclear reactors, for God's sake. So it's not exactly, I'm not saying Hypergriff are making more money than Hoyo, but Hypergriff are making a fucking shit ton of money, right? But I'm just, just talking about the overheads. Sometimes you look at and we go, well, this game made 20 to this game's 10. They've obviously took more money home. We don't know that. We just don't know that, you know what I mean?
But ultimately, while Enfield won't die off due to a lack of players, like many love to claim on their tribalistic mass misinformation campaigns, it's certainly coming up on a turning point that could decide the future for the game. Whether they decide to chase what's been proven to work over and over and introduce more FOMO and reasons to log in, or if they hunker down and commit to adding fun and engaging repetitive
content. We know what they should do. We know what they should do for the latter route, right? Because the former route will not make a better game. Now, people can come and go, well, look, Enfield's making more money now. Hey, it's the better game, which is stupid. I would much rather Enfield be laughed at by whoever, say, look how much money they're making in comparison. I'll rather take that and a good game. Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't matter to me how many new cars or apartments, lowlight boys, any more than it matters to me of, what's his name? From Hoyoverse buying a new yacht. I don't care about that. I care about a good game. As long as the game makes enough money to get reinvested into the game and it continues to get better and I get to experience it, happy days.
And that will keep people coming back for more fun than
I am a consumer through and through. I couldn't give a fuck about how much money they're making.
Entice a particular demographic into trying the game, but it certainly won't fix what's been broken this whole time. My name is Braxophone, and thanks for watching.
Okay, I think there's definitely some really good points in this video, right? I guess I just fundamentally disagree. This idea that, again, going back to that image I just showed you, a Billy, that Enfield's in this state where it has to come back from. I just don't think that's the case. Now, if you want to talk about Twitch tracker, I guess we can entertain that argument that maybe they could do more to get more people engaging with the content on YouTube and stuff. My YouTube streams of Enfield tend to do all right, but I'm more known for Enfield content, so I guess. But I do notice that people who try Enfield and upload videos, they get a lot less views. I think that's a thing that if they want to build up that engagement, then they maybe need to work on some stuff, right? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd love to know what you guys think. I think it's doing just fine, personally. It's a good game. I like it. I know lots of people don't. I honestly don't think it's a sickly game. I don't think it's a sickly game, man. That's in a state of peril, if you will.